Hello, everyone. If you can hear me tuning in, just setting up our interview with Rosana Machado Rodriguez, who's going to be joining us. We're just waiting on her to join now. But a couple days left still in the exhibition for 64 women pulling at the threads of social discourse. We're in our kind of last couple days here. It's the 11th, and it ends here on Saturday the 13th. So if you haven't gotten the opportunity to stop by, please always feel free to. Let's see. She should be able to enter in here pretty shortly. Let's accept her. If Instagram will cooperate. Oh, we're unable to join. Let's try, see if we can let her in. So we can kind of start with her interview. There we go. Let's check it. We can hear you all right, Rosana?
Yes, I cannot see you. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, we haven't had your camera show up, but we can hear you.
Okay. Is there something I have to do?
You may need to see if your camera is turned on for this. If you can see yourself in your camera, it might just be a little bit of a connection issue. Let's see. We might have to restart it, if anything, just to make sure that everything can go through fine and people can see the interview.
Okay.
Let me try to see if I can just disconnect and then re-add you, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm gonna re-invite you and let's see. Okay, let's invite Rosana again and see if she can join.
Here I am.
Can we see you now? Yay! There we go. We got everything figured out in the end. Sometimes just turn it off and turn it back on again solves everything.
Yeah, that's right.
So glad to be able to meet you. That I haven't been able to formally meet you yet. So this is our first time being able to talk even face to face over a camera.
Yes.
I'm glad we could have this interview. It's so nice to be able to talk to all the artists of the show, be able to kind of see their ideas and kind of where they're coming from on so many of their different works, like Rosana's here next to me. I chose a good spot.
Thank you. I'm also very glad to have been invited to this conversation. I think it's interesting to see what the artists think when they are doing their work. So I think it's good for people who goes to the show or who see it online to have a little bit of more information about what's going on.
Yeah, truly. It's been a blessing being able to have so many different artists in the gallery for so long. I mean, I think still this is the most artists we've ever had at once, totaling at 68 in the end. So this is a big move forward for us, and kind of getting able to show off so many different artists it's been splendid to have our walls coated completely. But really, one of our conversations that we wanted to have with you, as we haven't had like a formal interview with you quite yet, was to kind of ask you about some of your aspirations and your ideas behind, in particular, your work for this exhibition.
Yes.
So if we want to start with kind of, I guess the first question we really asked of you is, how do you feel creating a work that was meant to be shown alongside so many different other people's works?
Yeah, Well, I think that when an artist creates an artwork, you know that that artwork is going to be related to others. And unless you're doing a solo show, your work is going to be with other works, even if it is in a gallery or another kind of space or in a museum or wherever. Your work is going to dialogue with other works in a show. So I don't think that it was a greater challenge in that regard. But what I find interesting is when you create a work that you have a previous theme or some conditions that you have to fulfill. And it's interesting to see what happens after when all the works are put together, because all the artists are very different and they have different approaches, they have different aesthetic to work, even if it is the same material or even if it is the same technique, they are going to be very, very different. So I think that is something very rich. And I think that perhaps the difference with a traditional show, or the traditional way the shows are being held, when perhaps the curator is preparing a show, they decide a theme and they group the works after they are done. In this case, the works are grouped before they are done, and I think that it's a very interesting way of working also for the artist, because it is a challenge to develop a work when you have some external conditions. For example, here you have a measure, it has to be a square, it has to be a quilt. I think that it lets you to investigate or to try different things that perhaps you wouldn't have approached if you didn't have these external conditions. So I think it's marvelous when you see all the show put there in the walls and you say, well, with this same theme or this same measure or this same technique, you have all this variety. And I think that's something quite interesting.
Even amongst works on the same wall, I think giving the restriction of, we didn't even say sewing, we said just fiber. So we have works that are like paper, it's sewing, both machine and hand done, like yours. Paper, fiber, we have some plant materials, even some animal materials, even in the form of like feathers. So seeing so many varied works, kind of reflecting off of each other. I think it's great to work under almost restrictions, because those restrictions make you have to get creative with how you want to present your work. Even when we just tell you a size and a material, that really did stretch how far artists are willing to push a fiber-based work, and that led to so many interesting kind of combinations of pieces being next to each other, talking about different things. So I think in the end, it was a better restriction that we were able to place.
I think it's very interesting that, and also you see the particular way of every artist to work, and that's something really nice to see. And I would like to be there to see it in person, but I check everything online.
Hopefully we posted enough kind of pictures of everything, and we'll probably do a summary too of the show, so that people can get like one last look at it, because there's just so many different artists, so many different artworks, that I hope we've kind of touched on everyone as much as we can. But this was such a celebration almost of a whole community in the artwork that we're presenting, because it's not just fiber as material, it's not art, it's kind of the community effort of so many different people, of so many different walks of life, willing to create and collaborate on such a large exhibition across cultures, across genders, across ages. So it's an annual exhibition, but it's pushing a lot forward. So many different voices, so many different ideas, and I think that's been great for artists being able to participate. But we actually have a kind of idea to talk about with your work in particular, and that's what your inspiration for the work is.
Well, the story of the work is that I was traveling. I was in New York, and I met Melanie there. We had a meeting, and she told me, "Where are you going to participate on this show?" Well, how much time do I have to prepare it? Well, it has to be by the end of September, and I was going to be traveling up to the end of September. So I say, well, I'm here. I don't have my materials. I have nothing. Well, but I can tell you where you can go and buy. So she gave me all the places I have. I was near the garment district, so I went there. I had a few needles with me, but nothing else, and a few gray threads that I couldn't use. So I really missed my sewing machine. And after a few days after we had this conversation, I went to the Meiji Museum, and I ran into the mural paintings of the tombs in Egypt, the new empire, and there were the paintings about the goddess Atar leading the Nefertari
Yeah.
to the other world. Uh, they were holding hands, and when I saw that, I think, well, that's something. There is something there. It reminded me about all the things that we couldn't do in all this time in the pandemic. We couldn't touch, we couldn't be together, we couldn't be with the people we love, and that was very hard, I think, for everybody. It was hard for me to not to be able to go out and see my friends and see my family also, and it was very strange because you couldn't touch each other. It was dangerous. You were saying like hi or
Yeah.
strange things.
I got that a lot.
And you couldn't go and hug everybody, and you met someone in the street and you didn't know what it's like. Oh, hello. Oh no, like they were very uncomfortable situations because you didn't know how to react. And I thought that it was something important for us to get in touch, and I think that physical contact is our first way to relate to others. When we are born, we can speak, we can even see well enough, but the physical contact is the way we start a relationship, a bond with others, with your mother first, and then the rest of your family and the rest of the world. So I think it's something very important for human beings, and I wanted to put that in my work, and also I think that when we are together, we have something else that we don't have when we are alone. So I thought it was something I really want to talk about. And the name of the work is, I will say in Spanish, is Guía para el Más Acá, because when you die, you say that you're going to the Más Allá, something that you are going beyond. I don't know if there is a translation for that in English, if there is the same expression.
I wouldn't say there is a trans in a same phrase, but I think it's kind of guié par la massacre. It's kind of the drive to bring you closer would be
Yes.
probably the closest interpretation.
Yes, we say that when we go to display beyond life, there is something, there is this goddess leading you to that other place, and it's a guide to go to there. And I think that being together is a guide to be here, is a way we can go through life. We need to be with other people. We need our affections, our friends, and the lack of that, it was very hard. I think that people has to be isolated. They had a very, very hard time. And I think that when we are together, we flourish in a way.
Yeah.
You can have, there is a part of you that only occurs when we are together with other people. And that's why I choose that fabric with flowers to put behind the hands. And in the lower part, I think we cannot see it now. But
I can kind of steer a little bit to kind of get everyone.
In the lower part, I embroidered that the cactus that now we can see.
Yeah.
And I think that many people think that cactus are very aggressive plants because they have the thorns and you get hurt if you touch it. But I prefer to think about them like survivors. There is a plant that has to survive in a very hostile environment. They have to lead with the lack of water, and this is its a strategy to go through life. So I think that in a way we have been surviving this time. We had to be alone, we had to be apart from from the people we love, but we survived. Not all of us, I think a lot of people died, but I think we have to
the strength is to pull through.
To go through this.
Yeah.
And I think that now that perhaps you can meet again with the one you love, something is blossoming.
Yeah. 100%. And I think kind of that idea is no better place than something in like this, in a group exhibition where probably 99% of these people you've never even heard of their name or spoken to before. And so that now new friendship, that new kind of appreciation for others blooming, even if it's a stranger, is very important kind of going forward. There's a new acceptance that we need to have of each other, a new respect for each other, not just physically in this kind of space and interaction, but kind of for ideas and concepts going forward. The time in quarantine gave us all quite a bit of time to think of how important that interaction is. When you have something taken away, that's really when you know that you needed it so much.
Yes, I think that even though we have the technology and we can have this conversation and we are far away from each other, I am in Buenos Aires, you're in Miami, but I think the technology was a good way to survive, but it's not the same, not at all. It doesn't replace what we feel when we are together.
Yeah, 100%. But now, kind of as a kind of going on question from so many of these different points, as we've talked about being able to work like with other people and kind of your inspirations and so many of the deeper things behind works. I wanted to ask kind of your opinions on a very topical matter when we present so many especially fiber-based works. And that's kind of your approach now to fiber work. And now as it's kind of being seen past a craft, and the art world is starting to re-accept fiber work as a actual formal art. Um, I wanted to kind of hear your opinion. So much of your work is based in fiber, actually.
Yes, yes. I work in different materials, but I've been working with textiles for a while, and I like mixing things. This work is entirely made in fabric, and quilting is a textile technique, and it's all done by hand because I didn't have anything else.
You
So
did an
I
excellent job by hand. Like,
had to work very, very hard because it took me a lot of time to do it. As I was traveling, that was what I could do, work with my hands. Um, but I think one of the problems textiles, I worked for a long time with ceramics, and it's a field where you have the same problem, this discussion about art and craft. And one of the points is that the fiber is used not only for art, but also for everyday life and for other many things like your clothes or I don't know, the bed,
yeah, your clothes, your blankets, your towel, everything.
everything. So sometimes that former use uh, makes it a little bit difficult to accept that it can be also art. But the fact is that if you study the history of art of the 20th century, from the beginning, you have the works made by Duchamp, and he worked with ready-made. He took an object from everyday life, and sometimes he made a few transformations, and sometimes he did none, or had times sometimes he used a title and he played with the words. And I think, I don't know if he was the first, but he was someone who opened a lot of doors that in the second part of the 20th century, many lines in the art had been entering one of them. And for example, in conceptual art, you can have an instruction written in a paper, and it doesn't have even a material. You just have an instruction, and you have the instruction, and everyone with the instruction can do the artwork. And also there are artworks made with garbage. There are artworks that doesn't have any material. Yves Klein, that is a French artist in the 60s, he made a work called Areas of Intangible Sensitivity, Pictorial Sensitivity. And he sold the work. He's selling an area intangible. You can't touch, there is nothing there. There's nothing material, but there is the idea, there is the investigation of the artist. And I don't know, I can say, for example, Damien Hirst, he made a work with a shark and bound, and you can have other works. There is another artist, Adrian Villar Rojas. He's an Argentinian artist, and he signed a contract with Guggenheim. He put a nest of a bird called Hornero. That is a bird we have here. I don't know if it is there in Miami, in the States. He made a nest like this, like the oven you use for the bread in the fields, and it will be erode with the time, and the Guggenheim will reconstruct it forever during the time Guggenheim exists.
Wow.
I can say forever because that's
Yeah.
not guaranteed. Because as long as the museum exists, they will reproduce the work every time it disappears. So material is not the only point you have to consider when you are thinking if something is a work of art. You have the sensitivity of the artist, you have the conceptual ideas the artist is working with, and also we have to consider that there is the artwork that and the institutions, the museum, the galleries, also the artists, the curators, that in a certain time, in a certain period of time, they consider something, they decide, like, I don't, they don't agree to do this, but there is a decision that something can be considered in this artwork.
Yeah,
so fabric or fiber is one of the other materials that you can use to create. You don't have to think that because it is made with fabric, then it's a craft. It depends on what you are doing with the material, what ideas are you trying to express. And I think that that's the point. But also the material is important. I'm not saying that it's just the idea, because each material is different and each material gives you a different sense. It's not the same to use a fiber or to use a metal, because it will give you different senses, but all of them can be considered a possibility for an artist to work with.
It is a strong case for any material. It has its purpose. It has the feelings of the material can convey things as strong as what the artwork itself is trying to say. There is such an importance. Like I've now worked in so many different crafts as well. I recently took up metalwork, and the art that I constructed there, I feel it different from my drawings, from the paintings I've done, from the sculptures I've done. It's so much a different avenue to take. I think it's really important that so many artists kind of understand that the medium they choose to specialize in isn't always the medium that will work for their message the best.
Yes.
Some people, like, they can take excellent photographs, but really what they need to convey is done in massive installations. So it's so hard to kind of reach that point where you finally understand the meeting between what you're working with and what you want to kind of say with your material. So it is a really interesting kind of dichotomy that it's a balance more than anything that needs to be achieved. And yeah, with fiber art, especially, now we're seeing its rise, re-rise, as it's always been a material in high art for centuries and centuries. But hopefully, like, people do start to embrace this again as art, in the formal sense, because a craft can be turned into an art as long as you put the meaning behind it.
Yeah.
So hopefully we reach that point where everyone starts to have that acceptance. Even Duchamp, I've referenced, when I saw that you kind of were talking about that, I've mentioned his work, possibly his most famous work in Fountain, several times through talking with people about the exhibition, that even when the choice of materials in something like the Dada movement was so important, there was a purpose to the ridiculousness that they put on, as presenting a urinal with your name written on it, was important for that era of art. And now we consider that work and its kind of lineage to be priceless. The meaning it had is so much more than kind of what we would institute into the materials themselves. So it is a lovely conversation. to have at any point.
Sometimes for people who is not used to relate to contemporary art, it's hard to understand some works because sometimes in a school when you study art, you study the masters and perhaps the Renaissance, and you are used to see sculptures and paintings mostly, and that are, for example, a painting is just a painting. You it's done just to look at it. But when you are working with materials that have other uses, sometimes for people who is not used to see contemporary art, they can find a bit hard to understand what is going on there. But in the way you get close to it, you visit exhibitions, and if you're interested in something, something calls your attention, it's a good idea to approach the artist, to read about it, to see what is going on there, what is the artist trying to say, why that person is choosing that materials. Um, Perhaps contemporary art is not taught in schools, so people can find it a bit difficult. But I think they have to relate to us, the artists, and see what happens. If they like
I
the work, and even if they say, "Well, what's going on here? What is this?" Because it happens a lot.
yeah
But in the way you start relating to this, it changed.
yeah. I, as cheesy as it sounds, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the more we're willing to learn, the better it is kind of for everyone. That's why I've decided personally to take up so many medias, learn about so many different techniques. Um, I want to have that knowledge behind me to be able to then kind of push it forward, bring that information to new people, and be able to have those kind of discussions. Earlier, we had someone actually come in and see the show, and we were just talking about the different kind of cultural kind of dichotomies that people are presenting with their art. We have a Venezuelan artist talking about George Floyd, and we have an American artist. Uh, uh, we have a white artist talking about kind of black culture. So that kind of being able to make that cross-cultural identification, being able to use your medium as a way of reinforcing values and being able to talk about so many different things, giving that stance, giving kind of that soapbox to people to elevate these ideas and not so much elevate them, but finally bring them to the forefront where they need to be talked about, especially now more than ever when there's so many eyes upon, uh, especially artists, because people are looking for a way to, let's bring it full circle, to form that connection. And art has always kind of made that connection much easier to relate to. Even if you don't understand it now, even if you don't understand it in 10 years, being able to look back at that knowledge and kind of finally embrace what this artist was trying to mean and represent, it's very important for kind of society being able to move forward and being able to have open discussions about so many different topics. Um, and hopefully that ends up for the better.
Yes, I
um,
think that one of the good things of the art is that you can start a conversation about something that you are worried about or you are interested about. And um, in this case, I think that nowadays society is more worried about success than about bonds or affection, and you have to be always well, and you have to be the master of your future and to be proactive and to do a lot of things, especially when you are an artist. You have a lot to do that goes farther your specific artwork, even Instagram takes a lot of time. The media, meeting people, sending mails, preparing, writing about your work. You have a lot to do. And sometimes I think this society pushes to do that things, and sometimes you don't have time to 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 dedicate to what is important, that is the people you have around. And that's why I think getting in touch is important again.
100%. So I think that actually will kind of wrap up our little conversation and interview. Now, there's probably a million other conversations and questions we could ask back and forth, but we'll save that for another time, because gladly we're able to represent you, represent your artwork. For those who do not know, a little spoiler into kind of the time coming up. At Scope this year, we will be again representing Rosana and showing some of her pieces at our booth.
Thank you.
Hooray!
People that is there can go and visit the booth and
Yes.
see the work.
So anyone in the Miami area kind of like tuning in, either now or later down, if you're here for the kind of November 30th to December 5th time when Miami Art Week is going on, and you get the opportunity to visit Scope, you can see some of Rosana's work there. Or if you happen to be able to tune in and stop by for the last 2 days of the show, we'll still be open, so you can kind of see the whole exhibition, including Rosana's work here. And I think that should just about wrap this up. Of course, we're going to be continuing these interviews with Rosana, and actually I can swap sides. This piece above will be our interview for tomorrow with Lisa Rockford. So people can tune into that. And that should just be about what I have for you, Rosana. Is there any kind of last words you want to say?
I want to say thank you for the invitation, and also for the people who has been joining the conversation today, or will see it later on. So thank you very much.
Of course. It was so lovely talking to you, to have this conversation and hear kind of your opinions on so many things and your inspirations. So thank you everyone for kind of tuning in. And this is Gabe with the Camp Gallery and Rosana Machado Rodriguez, and we're going away now. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.